Some cowboys.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our June 3rd, 2025 Board of County Commissioners 9 a.m. board briefing meeting. Let the record reflect that all 5 commissioners are present. And we've got a busy morning, so we will go ahead and just start off with Chief Cooper.
Well, good morning, commissioners. Here along with Sergeant Karowski, we're looking for approval for 2 contracts. The first one is for our doctor that does all of our psychological exams for us, has been for a number of years. But with the implementation of Workday, now we're asking for a contract for it. But prior to that, we did not have it. So, Sergeant Karowski.
Right. So a little bit of background on Dr. Sowers. We can go to the next slide, please. So Dr. Sowers has been in practice for 30+ years. He's licensed within the state to do the reviews for us. And then he holds numerous amounts of certifications in law enforcement and corrections for evaluating what's important and what's not for our field that we work in. Next slide, please. So for us with detention services, we have required psychological examinations for all of our firearms qualified staff since the mid-1990s when firearms were authorized for us. And then just a brief history of what we've had in the last couple of years for these evaluations. We had a 17 and 22, 19 and 23, 22 and 24. And we're looking at upwards. We've had 6 so far for 25, and depending on our outlook for hiring for this year, and then at the beginning of next year, we're looking at upwards of between 20 and 24 additional evals to be conducted this year. Next slide, please. The reason that we're required to do this is effective in 2021. They require that all peace officers and corrections officers have these evaluations done as part of the police reform stuff that happened in the state. And then Dr. Sowers service for us comply with those standards. The RCW lays out who is required to do this. And then the Washington Administrative Code lays out what questions that Dr. Sowers is mandated to ask during that evaluation. And then next slide, please. And with this, this is a 4-year contract. We're looking to have executed with this just to, get to the end of Dr. Sowers's, career for him is looking at about 4 years, and it's having a total value of up to $140,000, with it being capped at each year at $35,000, with the potential of 50 evaluations done each year at that amount. Any questions, concerns with this request and enter into this contract with Dr. Sowers?
From the rest of
Just one quick is the rate of 700 per the same then, or is it just inflationary increase?
The 700 has been what we have been paying, and that's the upon that he's been at for within the last several years. It's been at that $700 mark.
So it's per evaluation.
Correct.
All right.
Okay. Next contract is a renewal with our contract with the Department of Corrections. Next slide. Thanks, Ron. First contract since I've been involved was the 2021. These each have been an amendment, and every year we ask for a 5% increase every year since then. That's the annual increase that's allowed by the state of Washington. I'm not exactly clear if that's their policy or if that's protected by RCW, but we've met numerous times, including with the superintendent of DOC, asking for the max every year. Next slide, please. So yeah, like I said, back in 20, we were at $89 a day, and now we're in about 125, or by the end of this contract, $125 a day. We also have enhanced rates. If you see down below, medical care, mental health, and acute mental health. Depends on the severity of their medical or mental health conditions. We do charge a higher rate. Majority of them do pay the base rate, and a lot of that's based on, because of crowding issues, we've limited the DOC to 14 inmates, no more than 14. A few years ago, we were up to close to 30, but we've limited the one housing module and less than 14. So today we are at 9. overall. So they're not here very long and they transport out 5 days a week now to basically do our crowding issues. So. Questions? And then here, we were here probably mid last year and we've reduced the numbers. We've reduced because of crowding, we've reduced marshals and DOC. And so we're less revenue from both of them over the year, but really just based on space. So we were in over $1 million a year and now we're projecting about 700,000 in revenue for this.
So, just making sure, because I mean, I think I was part of this initially with Jerry Gimmel when he was here talking about it. Have we done a cost analysis to make sure that we are recouping our costs?
What I would say is with this, we are not 100% covering our costs with Department of Corrections. And so that's one of the reasons we want them out as quick as possible. In order to really, I think the holding at least 14 and keeping a reasonable number, it really services local law enforcement because as law enforcement's arresting them in the community, a lot of them are going to have Department of Corrections probation violations as well. And so I guess we've researched the idea of going to zero, but no department's been in favor of that, the sheriff's office or city police, because they do have those.
I'm not worried about going to zero. I think we have to, as we start to renew these contracts. And I know the original one, and then are going through, but we really got to start to really look at recovering our costs, what our true costs really are. Especially on the medical and all of that, because, if they come in and there's they have to go to the hospital and that's all on the county, that should be up on them. And we gotta start to rethink these contracts, the state's wanting to put more pressure on us. And it was hard for us to get the higher rates. I mean, I think Mike, you were with me on that one, trying to get the higher rates and we did a good job, but I mean, I think we've got to continue to keep pushing it so we get full cost recovery.
No, I absolutely agree. That's actually why we push for those higher rates. And the other thing, the advantage we have with Department of Corrections and US Marshals is that if somebody is admitted in the hospital, they take over guard duties and we release them in custody immediately. So for medical, while they're in custody, we take care of, but if they are released to the hospital, those are the ones that are extremely expensive. They take over guard duties within 12 hours.
Thank you. I just want to
Yes, ma'am.
make sure that we're just constantly thinking of that.
Don's, he knows the kind of constant harping we're doing on trying to bring our rates consistent with our consortium members. If we were looking at this in isolation, we would probably tell DOC either you pay our rate or you have to find somewhere else. But we recognize that our sheriff's department and others who are arresting these individuals have no other place to bring them. So we've had to compromise some. I think with the medical recovery that we have, should they have those acute medical stuff, we are recovering better costs. But Don and his team have made sure that these individuals are quickly moving out of our jail back to DOC custody as soon as possible. So yes, it's a lower rate. Yes, we don't believe it's cost recovery, but it is a balance, and we're trying to also meet the needs of our sheriff's department, local law enforcement too. And it is a small population compared to how it used to be. And Don, maybe just share with the commissioners the termination provisions in here, notice provisions, that sort of stuff.
I think it's 180 days as well. I think we have 180-day termination with Department of Corrections as well. I'm not 100% sure about that.
I was thinking it was closer to 90, but
Yeah.
we'll double.
We did give notice to the US Marshals for the last contract. The next time we renew it, we want that going. So
we've shortened these notice provisions in each of the contracts for DOC and US Marshals to make sure we have the greatest flexibility we need to manage our overcrowding and capacity challenges that our jail continues to face.
And they're doing a much better job of transferring. Today we were at 9, and so they're keeping us typically in the single digits because they are problematic inmates. They are coming in off the streets, and a lot of them are bringing drugs with them and drug issues with them. So, thank you. Any other questions?
You may have said this, but the contract allowed us to manage the numbers that we need based on.
Correct, and actually that's based
So
on,
you've been doing.
yeah,
Okay.
Basically, by the way the contracts are written, depends on our overcrowding. We could reduce them to zero if we wanted to, if we're crowded. I think we'd hard to justify today, but there'd be times this year we could bring it to zero. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Yes.
Kevin, you're next.
All right, good morning. So the first item I have is the sign-on bonus modification. I'm sure you're all aware that the hiring bonus has been kind of, what the status over the last few years has been $25,000 for laterals and 10,000 for entry level. We're proposing that at the end of this current cycle, I believe the modification from last year ends at the end of June. And what we're proposing is a new structure where the entry level hires don't receive any kind of hiring bonus at all. And then the lateral hires would receive a modified bonus of just accrued leave. And so we would offer them, whereas I just had it right for me here. 180 hours of vacation, 180 hours of sick time. And those leave balances would be put in their books as soon as they're hired, and they can use those for leave, but they can't, in the agreement there is, they have a 2-year stay of when they can actually sell that time back. So they wouldn't, that time wouldn't be eligible for sell back or cash out if they'd be within 2 years. So there'd be very low risk as far as, someone coming over here and then leaving in a couple of months and cashing out 180 hours of vacation time. And then by 2 years, they would have accrued enough time anyway to be able to sell back the maximum of 80 hours a year. So they wouldn't receive an advantage there as far as sell back goes. They would just have a leave balance. And so they'd be able to sell back the regular time that they'd be able to sell back anyway. So for vacation. Sick leave, there's no sell back. Sick leave, they would be able to sell that or cash it out for 20 years. So.
So question, so you're talking 4.5 weeks for sick and 4.5 weeks for vacation.
Yes.
So that would be giving them. Yeah, that seems like a lot.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, yeah. It's 180 and 180, yeah. Well, the maximum amount of sick time is 1440. So a lot of people carry, very high level, and they can only accrue 8 hours a month anyway. So the sick time accrual wouldn't amount to much, it seems like a lot, but if you're a lateral coming over and you've spent 10 years in an agency and you're coming over with leave balances and, with the ability to take vacations and stuff, and then starting from nothing, that is kind of a big deal. So we wanted to incentivize it. We wanted to make it
Right.
good. Now, they can only take two weeks of vacation, we call it bid vacation. So they can only take 2-week increments of vacation a year. And then the other time would be used as kind of one-offs.
So remind me how does this change from what was the past practice?
In the past, it's a $25,000 hiring bonus. So we paid them a check, or we paid them the half of
Okay,
it.
now I'm remembering, because we
Yeah.
were like, is there a different way we can
Yes.
incentivize?
We
the
paid
lab?
cash, yeah. So they got half of it up front, and then the other half was paid out monthly after they not passed probation. After they passed probation, then they got a monthly check for the next 2 years for the other half of the bonus. And
So
then-
this would replace that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then the entry level was $10,000, so they get 5,000 up front, and then after they completed the academy and passed probation, so a little bit longer period, they'd get the rest of it over 2 years. So this would replace any cash that we paid out. We see it as, we know they're gonna be having a balance, and we know that they're gonna be able to take some leave, which means that potentially we might have to replace them on a platoon. However, leave's managed on a platoon level by the sergeant and lieutenant. So if they're denied days off, if it creates minimum staffing, which would create overtime. And like I said, they would have already accrued 80 hours in 2 years, so they'd be able to sell back 80 hours anyway, so that won't increase the amount that we're paying in sellbacks. It's just that they'll have a leave balance that they'll be able to use. And if they leave early, it just goes away. They don't get to cash it out like they would their normal accrued leave.
And we can account for that piece in our system.
We'll have to create a separate code, set up everything, so no, there's not currently a way, in PeopleSoft, it's almost impossible, so we'd have to do it outside of the system. of PeopleSoft.
Right.
Once we go live in Workday, we could create a separate balance and account, it's manual though, because then at 2 years, we have to pull into the other, so it's not a seamless system process.
It's no,
And how many laterals do we tend to have?
well, that's gonna change because we, historically, it's been about 50-50. But we're down to. Well, we have a retirement on the 19th, so I think we'll be back to 2 vacancies, so. With the amount of vacancies we're carrying right now, if it's 50-50, we're talking about 5 to 10 laterals a year at the most. That's our goal, is to not lose the current staffing we have and to kind of maintain the retirements of the people who, leave for various reasons. So I don't know what those numbers are gonna look like because this time last year, we had 40 vacancies. So we've hired a lot of people.
So I guess I'm just looking at the numbers here. I just feel like 180 is a lot for both.
I think the sheriff wanted me to propose more, so.
And that's, it seems like that would get him to get us to that 25,000 and we don't really need,
That's what he was trying to replace that value.
yeah. And I don't think we need that. I think we were determining that the money wasn't the issue. It was more having a leave balance. And so what's a reasonable leave balance? That would be helpful, I get
Yeah.
coming from another agency where you've given up everything and you don't want to start over.
But is it safe to say they didn't give up a leave balance? If they
They
left their own
probably cashed
agency,
it out,
they
yeah.
cashed it out.
Well, and
So they got money in return for that leave. So I mean, they're not walking away from
I want to point
leave
out
balance.
another thing too, is you're probably assuming that's off 8-hour or 10-hour, they work 12-hour shifts, so 180 hours is 15 days. So that's 15 days of leave. So if they were to take 2 weeks off and that's 9 days or it could be 12 days. And so that would eat the entire or most of the balance. So it's since they're on 12-hour shifts, it's only 15 days of leave. And then sick time, they accrue at 8 hours a month. And so that would actually be more time. The sick time would actually be more value as far as days goes.
Because when you take sick leave, you're not taking it 12 hours.
Oh, no, you're taking a 12-hour. So I guess, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is they accrue it at a smaller rate. So we'd be giving upfronting a little bit more than what they would normally accrue.
Okay.
But so when I presented this before as kind of an option or what we were, and the board was concerned about, losing an employee within the first couple of years or being able to cash out or take this money when they leave. And so that's why I extended it out for 2 years. So that, if someone's here for 2 years or, it's not they probably did just come over to grab the bonus and leave, they're gonna probably be here for a while. So that's kind of the mark that I picked to kind of protect that balance. I know one thing we can't afford to keep paying them money and other agencies I know a lot of hiring bonuses are falling off, but I think it's Everett or Bellevue that's at 35,000, 30,000. So there's still agencies out there paying bonuses for laterals.
Just gotta figure out how they can live there.
It's true.
So,
What's SPD's sign on bonus?
I don't believe they have one.
Okay.
How many vacancies do you have for officer or deputies?
We have 1 or 2 right now. We have a retirement on the 19th, so that'll create another position.
Wow.
yeah, so we're
That's a big change.
We've done well. And like I said, I think last year at this time it was around 40, 45. So we've hired a lot of people. We have 37, 35 people in the training environment right now somewhere.
That's
So-
why,
Just real quick to follow up, so I think the agenda sheet says it's budget neutral funded by basically the salary savings from open positions. So it sounds like we really don't have open positions. I'm
Yeah,
just
that,
wondering
I,
how.
that may have been
calculate
language, that may have been language that I forgot to scrub out from, that's when we presented the original hiring bonus, that would be, but that's,
Yeah.
we figured that one because of the savings. But this one, we're not laying out any cash, so we're still not, you know, it's leave that they're carrying on their books, but they would accrue eventually, and so we're just. I think we need to offer some sort of incentive or laterals, or we're
Yes.
gonna see laterals.
That's what I was gonna say, because you're not gonna offer one for new.
Yeah.
But you're trying to still get those laterals because it's easier to get them on board trained.
They're faster.
Right.
I don't know. Go ahead.
So I went back and looked at the first proposal for a sign-on bonus, which the three of us, you two weren't here yet, we were sent sort of a briefing sheet by Todd Milkey back in October of 2020. At that time, the sign-on bonus, it wasn't for everybody, but the sheriff's department was authorized up to $3,000. The ask at that time was to go from 3,000 to 10,000. And the main justification, it actually says justification, the number one was that the sheriff's office is currently experiencing a large number of vacant commissioned officer positions, approximately 25. And so it was that you couldn't hire people, we were down. And then it goes on, this was also at the time, this October of 2020, there was a lot of civil unrest. There were a lot of, that was when that defund the police movement was up. There were a lot of law enforcement professionals that were leaving certain jurisdictions looking to go to friendlier jurisdictions. And I remember, yeah, and I remember at the time, Sheriff Knezevich told us that it was essentially, we had all these other jurisdictions, you had a huge talent pool of folks out there, you know, sort of on the free market looking to sign with an agency. And at that time, we needed something to compete because at that time, everybody was offering a sign-on bonus and we had the vacant spots. We don't really have the vacant spots anymore. Jurisdictions are doing away with the sign-on bonus. I mean, do we need to still play sort of in this field of bonuses, or is that going away?
Well, I mean.
Because the field has shifted. It's a different world.
100%. Yeah, and I totally, everything you said is absolutely true. And you're right, the field is shifting. And this, all this is doing is allowing us to be competitive with the select few laterals who were, so the lateral field is going to dry up, right? Or has dried up, and we're not getting as many as applicants or people aren't leaving agencies for the reasons you just said, because things have calmed down. People have settled into new agencies. I mean, people aren't moving up from California as much. There's a lot of things that are happening. And so you're right. I don't want to carry more than 5 vacancies, right? That's all I want. And we have 2 right now, or 1. And so I want to maintain that. And so the way to do that is we are going to lose people throughout the year, is we want to be able to reach out and get and attract some laterals, a handful a year, 5, maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 10. I don't know, you know, depending on what we lose, and to be able to incentivize them to come here. And that's all this is. The entry levels, I think, are going to be steady and probably be what they are because people are trying to get into the profession. And there's not a lot of agencies offering entry level incentive bonuses at all. We offered them for a while and we got an influx of entry level because we were ones offering that bonus. But I don't think we need to do that either. So that's why I didn't even propose anything for entry level. They'll start as new employees and that's it. But laterals, we may need to incentivize some people to come over.
Does our job posting say sign-on bonus? Like, did people know?
It should now, yeah.
So a couple months ago, we pulled all sign-on bonus language off of lateral and entry. And as of right now, we've seen no slowdown in lateral applications or entry applications. That could change in the future, but as of, I talked to Ashley last week just to get an idea of what we're going to look like. And as of right now, we've seen no slowdown in the amount of applications. In fact, we're continuing to see high levels of applications, both lateral and
high, low, yeah, but the ones we've hired, we had a swearing in, it was last week, and I think there's 3 from one agency and then 1 from a different agency. And that's kind of the last lateral hiring group we're gonna see until after this all gets hired out, because we don't want to offer people jobs and then have it be in the middle of, they originally applied back when it said there was a hiring bonus, and then now that there's not one, and so we wanted to avoid that, so we're kind of waiting to see if this gets all. But as far as applications go, I don't know how many are coming in, because we don't get them until they
Yeah.
get.
So I have access to that, so we're still seeing a high level of both entry and lateral at this point.
Just a question. So on the, it looks like 180 hours is eligible to be sold back after 2 years, right?
Well, but they can only, their contract only allows them to sell 80 hours a year.
Oh, okay.
They can
So
sell.
you're saying they would accrue anyway unless they used it.
Yeah, unless they took time off, they would have enough time to sell back in 2 years.
Okay,
Okay.
can I ask, what's the anticipated impact this has on overtime? I mean, these are positions where if a deputy calls in sick or a deputy takes vacation, I mean, it's not something where they just show up the next day and catch up on their work. You have to bring someone in to cover that shift. I'm sure there's models that can be run on, I don't know
I don't know if
how
there's-
that works. I mean,
there's-
but
We manage time off, so they get or the contract allows them to get 2 weeks of vacation every year, and so every year to the markup. The beginning of the markup, the supervisors go out and they put out the bid, and by seniority, everyone in the platoon bids a vacation, they put that in the calendar. You gotta give that out, and so that takes every platoon down to 1 during those timeframes, and those are 2 weeks per year per deputy. After that, leave is discretionary, and leave is, when they go in and put in a time slip, let's say they're at a minimum staffing of 10, which is the required minimum staffing, and they put in a time slip, the sergeant denies it. They say, no, you can't have that day off because we're already at 10. Someone calls in sick, nothing we can do about that, but that person was denied that vacation day. So if they call in sick, and then we have to replace them, then they use their sick time, and we got to replace them anyway. If they're at 12 and someone's on vacation, they can approve that time off and take it down to 11, but it's managed at the platoon level by the sergeants and the lieutenant. There are times when there's mandatory training, required by the state, like the 24-hour patrol tactics we got to put everyone through, or the CIT training, or all this other stuff that we're mandated to do. We have to put people through training, and that takes away chunks of time, and sometimes that creates overtime in addition to vacation time, because we have to contractually allow someone to be off on vacation, one person. And then we have this mandatory training that comes in, we have to do it at a certain time. That may create overtime. And it looks like it's being driven by vacation, or really it's driven by mandatory training that we have to do, or other trainings that we have to do. So generally speaking, discretionary leave doesn't drive that much overtime. It's all the other stuff. And sickness, and family medical leave, and injuries, and there's a lot of vacation time that gets denied by our supervisors because of all that other stuff.
So I don't know, so it's just me throwing this out there, that, I see the purpose of having somebody who's worked a while in law enforcement to have a leave balance as they come in. Because yes, they've given it up, and yes, they got paid out for it at the other location, but they've also given it up. So then when they come here, they have, and so I see that as an incentive. But not kind of like 10 days, going from 15 down to 10. Which is basically like 2 weeks accumulate. So that way, because then they're going to start accumulating as they're here too.
Yeah.
But it gives them the ability that if something were to happen with their family or something, or if they became sick, they've got that ability
Have something.
right away. I understand that's how we see a lot of upper level positions.
We're just trying to think of a way to, have a very minimal impact on the budget and still incentivize people to come over. Because I'm not gonna sit here and I don't know what it's gonna look like, and I don't know what's gonna drive someone. There's reasons people come to work here from the west side of the state that are beyond incentives, right? They don't want to work over there. They don't like living over there. A lot of the lateral applicants from that side of the state come over and moved to Idaho because they want to live in Idaho, and then enjoy working in Washington. So that happens a lot. And so I don't, that's probably a bigger incentive than the vacation balance. Well, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you this is gonna solve our recruiting, or I'm not gonna sit here and tell you we're gonna have a hard time recruiting. I simply don't know because we haven't not had a bonus for 5 years.
No, and they want to live in Idaho, but they want to work here because they want to keep their retirement.
They want
benefits.
the retire, the Washington State is a better retirement system, we pay more. But then, there's benefits that you see living higher. So
Yes. So, I don't know what anyone else's thoughts are.
I know the sheriff talks to all the, he interviews every applicant that he hires and I know he asks them about the bonus and incentives and things and so he proposed this because he feels that a leave balance is something that the laterals he's hired recently and people we've talked to would be interested in. And so that's why he's.
No, he and I actually, we talked about it, that's what he's hearing from laterals. They're not, the money wouldn't be as big a deal as they prefer a balance.
Yep.
So. So anyway, so you're either done at 10 days or 100, from 180 hours on 120.
What's the status of the detention bonus?
It is still in place, but it also expires the end of June. That the commissioners will have to consider. It's less, but they are still having, it's less of a payout, but they still have.
The vacancy.
They still have vacancies. They've made some headway, but there's still a lot outstanding.
Yeah, and in detention, the two most difficult things to recruit continue to be our corrections officers, both entry and lateral, and cooks. Actually, we're really struggling for cooks. DTSAs we're getting better at, but if there's any program that definitely needs to stay in place, detention absolutely needs it. Juvenile is still also struggling to fill some of their officers, but they have elected not to do a sign-on bonus still. So at this point, detention will need to come forward for review in the next couple of weeks. They're one that I highly support, needs it still at this point.
Madam Chair, so are you suggesting 120 for both, for the sick and the vacation? I would support that. Because I do think that there's a benefit to getting people over
That are already trained.
that are already trained, but I also, it sounds like we are getting many more applicants and that's good. We're filling the positions. So I would rather, if we're looking at where to put dollars, I think that was a good point that we have other positions that we're having trouble filling. So.
And I just want to reiterate, I'm not saying, I don't know if we're gonna have to create problems. That's what we want to avoid is getting into a situation that we've been in for the last 5 years where we're trying to catch up again. So if we can get out ahead of it, we're gonna do our best to continue the hiring. The hiring unit or the training unit, the hiring division has done a great job getting people in, getting things done, getting the training done and getting them on board. We just want to, I guess it's, we're at full speed and we don't want to back off. That's our.
And these are annually, we're just doing 1-year agreements
For
these.
yes.
So you have to come back.
It'd be July to
You
July.
can give us the statistics as to how many laterals did we have that have taken advantage of this? When we look at it next time.
And I hope I'm back here next year saying, hey, we still have 1 vacancy.
That'd be awesome. Any thoughts for Scott?
Whenever the board decides, my recommendation is to make it clear that the financial impacts down the road, whether it's overtime from them being able to take it during the 2-year probationary period, if you will, and then cash outs have to be absorbed within the sheriff's department budget. There is no additional dollars available. So just as the last hiring bonus was in place, it was in place, and it was using vacancy savings to pay for it. It was not additional funds that were being requested by the board. So I would just make that clear with this. If it's my recommendation, you guys to take and act on as you will.
I guess that's it. This doesn't come with a an ask, your briefing sheet said.
We're not
budget
asking for
neutral.
additional funds for it.
So how will that be tracked though? Cause it seems like any cash impact on the budget would be 2 years delayed, right? Because it would be, if they leave and they try and sell out whatever they've built up.
That's what Ash is saying in the new system. Go ahead.
Okay,
It's
Yeah, so that's where this gets a little bit difficult. So current state, likely the sheriff's office is gonna have to have a separate spreadsheet that enters in these hours and that tracks them. At 2 years, we can then dump them into their leave balances, or we could create a separate code. If they're used in the next 2 or 3 years, it should be about the same rate as their current rate. If they're using it, like if they hold the sick leave balance until they retire, then that number exponentially increases, right? Because they're gonna dump that 50% into their VIBA at that time, so that's gonna be more difficult, and the department's likely gonna have to figure out how to track that, honestly.
But that'll be in 20 years.
But it still is a much higher cost, so if today it's 10,000, 20 years from now, that might be 40,000, right? Because it's based on your wages. So we're gonna have to figure out probably some sort of tracking mechanism outside of our systems to show the compounding growth on that with the different codes. From a usage perspective with Workday, we could make it work from like a code perspective. We would set up like sheriff codes specifically for their leave balances. But the impact of the wages, we'd likely still need to be tracking separately over time to show it started here and it goes to here. We haven't done that yet. We'll have to figure it out with Lisa in the sheriff's office.
In the sick time, I guess my point on that is, you have to be here for 20 years to cash out sick time. And an employee in 20 years is gonna max out their sick time unless they use it for stuff, right? They're gonna, let's say have injuries or baby leave or whatever, they're gonna get their 1,400 hours in 20 years and stop accruing time. So even if you front them 180 hours and then throughout their lifetime accrue 2,000 hours, they're still only gonna be able to cash out half of 1,400 or 1,440. It'll be worth more in 20 years, obviously, probably a lot more. But it's still, they're gonna have that anyway if they stay here for 20 years. If they leave in 15 years, they don't get any of it. So. Unless the contract changes.
I think your suggestion is reasonable, and as long as we keep in mind that it's within current budgets.
Honestly, if I could, in a year, if I come back and we're still at 1 vacancy or 2 vacancies, I see the need to continue it. So
It's like a ramp down.
Yeah.
Thing from what we've been doing, so.
Now, if I come back and we're at 30, they're
Or can it, I mean, I guess, I don't know, can you just do it on a case by case basis, or does it have to be set where it's like, there's a lateral?
I would recommend, because of the office that it is and the way that we post the positions, that we would want to have it as consistent. Especially because they're hourly employees, they're not exempt salary.
Would you set it at either they have to have served 5 years? I mean, because you're really talking about the laterals that have been, 10, 15 years they're coming up.
I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it. If we had a tiered system for time, if you've been around for 5 years, I can figure out how much, they would have accrued with us, and maybe we can match or partially match that. But if it's 10 years, it could be a little bit more. I mean, that's certainly, but I think that'd make tracking a little more challenging.
It would,
Cause I think when we moved it, in 2020, when we moved it, from 3 to 10. And then at some point after that, we went from 10 to 25. It was always up to the number, but then it ended up being the max. And I don't think anybody
It's
ever
always
got,
the max.
no one ever got 24, 23 or 17. It was always, they got the 25.
And this wouldn't apply
on
to
paper, it
yeah.
was up to.
And this wouldn't apply to provisional laterals. I wouldn't advocate that. A provisional lateral would be someone who's, I think they're less than here, but they've been through the academy, but they haven't completed probation of their agency. So this wouldn't apply to them. This would be people who, for the most part, have 5 to 10 years of service on.
I do like that idea that Commissioner Kinney, so maybe we say it's at 5 years, right?
I mean, it's an interesting, I think for tracking. it
That
just makes
idea.
it-
I mean, because I just think it's when we hired Justin Lundgren,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's,
Yeah, 20
again,
plus
that's
years.
somebody 20+ years, you want to provide some leave balance for them. You know, and in those first 5 years, you're just kind of doing things, so, you know, and leave is accruing, but, you know, maybe setting it at that 5-year level, or maybe
Yeah.
it's a 3-year level. I don't know what that number is.
20 years ago, I would have agreed with you. I don't think I took a day off until I'd been on for like 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a different.
It's a world.
But I do think from a PTO or a leave perspective, that 5-year mark, that is about when you start falling into like your natural career path, right? So I do like the idea, if you have 5 or more years of experience, you would qualify for the 120, but anything prior to that, maybe not necessarily, because I mean, Kevin, that's probably what you're looking for anyways, it's kind of your more seasoned people and not your 1 year, 2 years.
Well, and like I said, the 180 hours are the total. I was trying to replace the value of the 25,000. I wasn't looking at, where they would be in their career. So I was at the direction of the sheriff. I was just trying to replace the value of the $25,000. That's why I came up with the numbers I came up with.
So can you go back and talk to the sheriff to say if we did like a 5-year minimum,
I think
120 each?
So what I hear you saying, to make sure I'm confirming this, and Kevin to talk to John about or sheriff about, is if a person has 5 or more years of experience and is hired as a lateral officer, they would qualify for 120 hours of sick leave and 120 hours of vacation leave.
So I think.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
And then it has to be covered within.
Those.
yes.
To that point, obviously the hiring's doing really well. And I would assume that the budget had some level of projection for the vacancies. So I'm just wondering, are we on track with the sheriff's budget, or how are we doing relative to the pace of the year, so to speak? So in other words, is there money within current budget to pay for it?
Well, that's why I'm not advocating for continuing the hiring bonus, because I don't think we'd be able to afford to pay out the $25,000 for new hires of last half of the year. We still have, one vacancy is still a savings, right? But we still have some vacancies that we float, but certainly not enough to cover that. As far as the projections, I can't tell you, because we're on our budget is we're at we're in the point of hiring and getting everyone trained. When I think like I've said a couple times, where we're going to see a spike until we get these people in the car, and we have people coming over the last half of the year out into the field to fill positions. And right now they're all in training, and so we're covering a lot of stuff with. So we're having kind of a spike in overtime right now, and so if you project out a spike, it never looks good, right? Because it looks like it keeps going like this, but I don't know when that's going to settle down. I'm hoping really soon. We need to get people trained and out and working solo patrol. That's the problem with being so successful in a short time of hiring. You have a whole bunch of people you're training.
Probably next June is when we'll see that spike fall. So we're still in training, because it's a year, right, that they're in training before they're actually out on their own. So if we look at the hiring we've done over the last 6 to 8 months, and then the projection of still having about 7 to 10 more in the next 6 to 8 months, I would say we see a significant decline in that slope of May of 2026, just based on when most of them should be out in vehicles at that point.
I didn't bring the back. I had the background update. It just got emailed to me and I didn't bring it, but I can look at it. I think I'm optimistic it'll be a little sooner than that, but it won't be waste. It won't be next month. I can tell you that, because I think we're getting an influx of people in the training or out of the car. October. I think that's when the first big rush comes, and then it goes out from there. So.
Does that create a budget problem for this year? If we're potentially over? And how do we, are we looking at the budget amendment? I'm just wondering kind of what the outlook is for this year.
This isn't gonna have that effect.
I think this will help the budget, because we're not gonna be paying out these chunks of dollars, but
So that's.
I would have to
maybe
defer to
that's-
I'd have to
gonna
defer
be-
to the budget office on that. side. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Office, your team larger.
or that's what I mean, I mean the budget office of my team, right now, our projections don't look good, but that's, like I said, we're kind of at the height of our overtime, so.
And then.
So I'm gonna have us,
I'm sorry.
oh, go
For
ahead and
those,
have us move on.
okay, yeah, for those positions that were hired under the other bonus, we do still have the continuation of their bonus payments. So there is a 2-year payout cycle. So those would be wrapping like end of next year-ish to wrap all of the rest of those bonuses that have gone under our current policy.
And maybe a few stragglers, the ones we just hired to be a little bit further. than that.
Yeah, but the bulk would be end of next year.
Most of the entry levels and the early ones.
Okay, so you will go back and talk to the sheriff?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. And then look at the next one.
Oh, this is another, see, I usually bring good budget things. So this is our, the hiring or
It is not a
the,
good thing.
hiring, yes, the, ordering window for Ford. They went ahead and adjusted on it without telling us, and, they changed it to May 23rd. Unfortunately, our formal bid process went out to May 27th, so they were looking for, legal. Felt that it was a special market condition that warranted the short bid turnaround, so we have the 3 bids here. And this includes the Valley vehicle purchase as well, so this isn't all county, this is actually 20 or 14 vehicles for the Valley. But they go through our budget process and everything to purchase the vehicles, and then they front the money, so. Only about 300, I just did about 360,000 of this is for the county. But we needed approval to do the short bid window because Ford closed the window on us.
So, I had a call from the mayor here weekend for Spokane Valley, and she was expressing concern that, we were spending money that wasn't in the budget, and that they are stressed financially, and was asking me to pass on that, they're in a strapped situation. I think they even cut 2 vehicles out of the total procurement because they were trying to reallocate some money to another priority that they've had to deal with and stuff. So if you could pass that on to Chief Ellis, that would be very much appreciated.
We only ordered the vehicles that they requested, so.
I think there was some other issues like evidently purchased an F-150 to haul motorcycles or something like, I don't know all the details about that, but you might want to circle back with Mr. Holman and just make sure that there's alignment between what you guys are doing, what they have an expectation of.
For the vehicle purchase, Chris Weiss reaches out to them and says, what do you want? And they send us a list and we order for them. And they say it's funded, so
Okay,
what they order and, what they're doing with them, that's their
okay.
budget, so.
Maybe there's some miscommunication with them. I'll circle back with her.
Yeah, oh, and I can have Chief Ellis
Yeah,
circle back there.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
So just for the commissioner's awareness, this is not a approval request, a request to approve the purchase of vehicles. That's the sheriff's department's ability to manage their budget. This is for our civil team has drafted up a approval for the board to consider special market conditions and bypass the competitive bid requirement. because-
Sorry if I wasn't totally clear on that.
No, that's right,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
So this is different because you're not approving the purchase of vehicles, you're approving the ability to bypass the competitive
Sure.
bid requirement, yeah.
So is this the equivalent of sole sourcing then? Is that what we're doing or not or? I'm trying to.
It's not because we're still getting a bid, we're still getting 3 bids. It's just short.
Okay. Yeah, cause I had to deal with this once before, I think with Ozzy, in terms of missing that cutoff time for Ford. Cause they only take bids once a year for law enforcement. And then they get it in a production cycle, and the reason they only do it once a year is because they gotta retool
They remodify their.
to be able to modify to deliver the law enforcement vehicles. So if you miss that window, you're SOL for a full year. And so so if we miss that window, then I can understand why we'd have to do something to get back into the window.
That's exactly right. They shortened the window. So
Okay.
that's the special market condition we're asking you to approve,
Okay.
but we're still getting 3 bids.
We saw 3 bids, yes, and those are included in the pack.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I have it right here. It's Wendell Ford, Mike White, and Corwin with 3 return bids. It was emailed to me, so.
But to Commissioner French's remark earlier, so in the spokesman review, there was the article that said the Valley was shorting their planned order from 14 vehicles down to 12. So just that's just as reported by the spokesman review. So.
And that may be so. So what happens, we do the bid and we do the request, the initial request of what they send us. We can actually,
Sell it.
we can shorten that order or we can extend it. So like, let's say we put in a bid for 10. And then later on, we find out we need 20 vehicles. We can actually request 10 more vehicles in the same, as long as we got our order in the window, then we can increase order. And so they may choose to knock 2 off that.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't have that here. So they ordered 14 from us originally.
So I didn't think we put money in your budget for cars for 2025.
That's true.
So how are you gonna pay for the cars?
We are going to do a budget amendment. We talked to the budget office about this. We have a dire need for 7 vehicles. And so I cut it down to the very basic, what we need just to fill positions, and we're gonna do a change order and pay for it out of our budget.
Okay. So you're not asking for additional funds to do it? You're not gonna come in by the end of the year and ask for any more money?
You want me to, I can't.
Well,
I'm
not asking for more money today,
I'm not prepared
that's
to answer.
great, but coming in
That's
near
something.
the end of
that-
the year and asking for more money,
That's something I'm
you're
not
just as
gonna,
bad.
I'm not gonna speak for the sheriff on that. So.
Well, and
Well, this is kind of an important thing, I mean,
But we haven't, like I said, we haven't bought the vehicles yet, but that's our plan. We've done the transfer, place the order to procure the spot.
And we initially during the budget cycle, we talked about that was part of capital and we were going to come back and talk about capital. And we never really came back and talked about capital. So
We will,
Okay.
but there's the contingency for capital.
we will run it. There's another
But
order.
I think John has said that he thinks that he can do it through your budget.
We think we can, yeah, but like I said, we're experiencing a spike in overtime and I just don't want to be. I hope it doesn't continue, but I can't sit here and say, I'm not gonna provide bad information to the board, so.
I appreciate that, but if
Like,
we're.
a bunch of cars will be broken. Maybe I should go check it out.
Right.
I know, and that's, there's. We need the vehicles to put people in them. We've hired people, we're running out of cars. We're gonna do our best. I've told the garage that they're gonna be fixing some stuff and piecing things together, and they're gonna go over miles, and it is what it is, but. We still don't wanna run out. And then in addition, we have some computer purchase. That we're gonna have to make too, and so we're gonna have to ECR some money for that as well, but right now, it looks like we can pay for it.
Right now. But your budget's for a whole year. I mean, that my concern now is,
I'm
I
doing
mean,
my
I
best.
hope you see my concern is that, I mean, I know you have money in your account today, but you have ongoing expenses all the way to the, and I know you understand this. I'm not trying to be rude or talk down to you. I mean,
I don't feel like you are.
Okay, but I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
but I mean, we're in June right now. I mean, you got the rest of the year. Do you have money to get us to the end of the year, or your department to the end? I mean, that's my concern. You said about $300,000 for the car, I mean, rough, I mean,
It's
that,
51.7 times
yeah, I mean,
seven.
that's a big chunk of money to,
I'm working on ways to cut budget from other things, and. Well, I guess I mean, I'm in an uncomfortable situation. I'm the bad guy when it comes to money. I've cut things from people's budget and moved things over. So it's my goal, just like last year, to operate within the budget that was approved, and that's what my job is. So I mean, I'm telling you, I'm every day I go into Chris's office and Celia's office and ask where it is and what's going on and how things are looking, where we can cut and what we can do. And there's just certain things. I mean, I have to train people a certain way. We have to pay for that. I have to meet the minimum state requirements. I have to put them in cars, right? I mean, I have to give them a computer so they can do their job. I have to buy them a gun. I mean, there's things I have to do. And I'm trying to get down to the have tos and get rid of all the stuff that we don't absolutely need. So.
Just a clarification, so budget amendment, is that a change to the lines?
Yes, they moved some money out of their payroll benefit line to a capital line.
That's
Or
what
both
the budget amendment would be,
Both the computers and the cars.
but it wouldn't necessarily.
It's
be-
not an amendment that comes before the board.
No,
It's just, it's processing it within the
It's
workstation
just-
system.
just-
So we call it a budget amendment, but it's really, the sheriff is in control of his whole total budget.
Okay.
He moved money between lines, which is within his.
It's a BCR budget change request, right? And that just goes through the system, and then the money gets moved over from the budget to pay for it. But in the places where we took them, I mean, historically, I think we've been under budget in those spots, and so we felt that was safer to take it from there.
So that's not something that comes back to us.
It would come back to you if it was an overall increase.
But I was.
But this is within,
If in October or November, it looks like we're gonna be over budget, then that's when we come back to it.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
which budget line did you say this is being pulled from?
cumulative salary and benefits.
Salary benefits, yeah. Or I think overtime was the.
Overtime thing, from our perspective,
Yeah, it's all-
overtime
it's all the
included in
same.
there. I think they might have additional.
We have it broken
supplements.
out in overtime.
Yeah.
We use it we took it from overtime and a little.
From our perspective, it's one big line.
But you just told us on the last issue that you only have one vacancy
Well, technically two, but yes.
or two, but it's, do you have capacity to pull out $300,000?
I'm telling you, from our projections and the numbers that Chris and Celia run, it looks like we do right now. It does. We can certainly do a mid-year budget update, and I mean, I've got no issues with that, and show what the projections look like and where they're pulling their numbers, and I mean, we're obviously as transparent as we're trying to do it with the money that was budgeted. But and I would have honestly, I mean, there's things like the Axon contract, for instance, we had additional need. I originally did the contract projecting a certain amount of vacancies in, and when they were so successful in hiring, I came back and asked for money, but I try to push it off as far as I can to the end of the year where we get delivery like right when people get here. And we've been in a circumstance where we're hiring people and getting them into training, and I don't quite have the equipment to give to them, and then we get it, and because I push it off so far, so I'm doing my best to delay purchases as long as possible, and that extends vacancy savings a little bit further. I mean, that's what I do. But
Thank you.
yes, absolutely.
This is on today's agenda.
And that's just the approval of the bid process.
Yeah.
You know what, honestly, and remember.
Because of the market.
Right.
change.
Special
That-
market
That's on
conditions.
today.
Special market conditions.
Approving the special market conditions on today.
And remember, the 7 that we have earmarked or done the change, if something changed, we don't have to necessarily, we can modify that order, so.
Okay.
We had to get it in.
Yeah, understood. Looking for it here.
And obviously, apparently, according to the spokesman review, the valley's already decided to do that, so I mean, but we had to get that order in.
Oh, there it is.
to be under M.
3M.
Madam Chair, I might just suggest maybe it would be a good idea to do a mid-year check-in on it. I mean, it's a good problem to be hiring people. That's a good thing. But where are we at? You know, it sounds like like you were saying, the reduction of the overtime and other things might be taking some time to take effect. So I'd just be curious kind of where we're at.
And also, we knew this was coming, right? We knew if we were successful, we knew this was coming. I wasn't here in 2020. I wasn't in charge of the budget and I wasn't doing all this. And, you know, sometimes, you know, when you're trying to fill vacancies, you're being aggressive about it. You know, you don't want to overpromise on savings and, you know, that I kept telling everyone, I go, the well's gonna dry up. We're not gonna have the vacancies. We're gonna be full. That's our goal. And so I'm trying to make sure that the vacancies and the budget go like this at the end of the year, and then we start the next year and you know where we're at. We're doing our best. But I can absolutely bring back we can come to a presentation, show where we are budget wise and what our projections are, and I can show where the new people are coming out of the car and where we project those savings are going to be. Absolutely.
Sure. I think the mid-year would be a great idea, and perhaps the overtime, taking out the overtime is the right choice, because I do recall when you and Chris were in here presenting budget, I believe the statement was for every new hire, you're able to reduce overtime by, I think it was $145,000. It was a stated amount. So it's probably the right place to be taken out of, because you should be seeing overtime being reduced.
And you know, if we get those people in the car, we get them trained and we start reducing overtime, and even 3 months period, we're talking 20 people, you know, that's a savings. So we're just, I even like in contract negotiations, everything, when we talk about personnel, I've been doing this for 22 years now. I've learned that you never make promises longer than about a month as far as personnel goes, because I turn around and I'm like, hey, we have 20 vacancies again. I don't know how that happened. You know, I feel like I don't know what's going on. And you know, we're like, hey, this platoon's gonna be full, and then someone breaks their back, and then someone announces they're having a baby, and then, you know, so I'm so apprehensive to look at numbers and say, we've got 20 people here, we're gonna have 20 people here. So I just know that's not gonna happen. So I just want to be as honest and as transparent as I possibly could be on that.
And I think that makes sense. I appreciate that. We're just constantly looking at a bunch of dark clouds for the next couple of years. And so I'm thinking about, you know, how many cars are needed next year. And it's good for us, I think, to be constantly checking in.
We are gonna have to really imagine our vehicle needs over the next couple of years, because I presented a vehicle replacement plan that was pretty, you know, it was optimal, right? It showed that the cars are gonna reach a certain amount of mileage and we're gonna need to rotate them out or use them for other things. We're gonna have to figure out a way around that. We're gonna have to figure out a way to push that. It's just the way it is. And the 7 that we're proposing to order is half of what my vehicle replacement plan was. So actually a little less than half. So we're already trying to do that. We just need to figure out it. All right, awesome. Thank you. Remember, last week I was here with a $13.
I'm back again with $13.
Preston,
Hey, good morning, commissioners.
morning.
This is a update on the co-response program that I've worked for a couple of times. So with some conversations with the city, there's some slight changes to the program elements. So after consulting with Scott, we wanted to bring it forward back to the board and also postpone the vote that was planned for this afternoon for your session and bump it to the 17th. We're not removing the ILA, but gives the opportunity to be able to provide an update to the board prior to the vote, that we still would like to move forward on this. So I just want to start by saying I still support the project. However, with the programmatic elements, it may change how it would be visibly seen as part of the service delivery. So that's the part we're going to talk about this morning.
We know which one item this is on today's.
It's not on,
Last.
it's not on this afternoon. It's only the.
Sorry.
Oh, you already?
It's already been
voted on?
removed, yes.
Oh.
Yes. So wanted to make sure we discuss that. Been removed. You should see it 17th is where we tentatively put it forward, depending on the board would like to move forward sooner. We'll back up to the 10th, but this is working this for a year, so I want to make sure this is right before we proceed forward. So in talking with the Spokane City Fire and with our crisis provider, the original plan is to have 4 teams working simultaneously in the community. That would have a behavioral health provider and a paramedic. So it'd be 8 individuals, 4 teams of 2 going out providing that service. However, talking with City Fire, the current model allows for 1 team to actually cover a certain number of hours every day. Well, Monday through Friday currently. The goal is to expand that out to allow for increased hours. So instead of 8 to 10 hours a day, up to 12 hours, in fact, more potentially, if we're able to get the coverage expanded with our crisis responders. Goal is to move towards a 24-hour response. However, talking with Fire, they're actually seeing the need for specific hours. So we're going to start there. It's a 12-hour shift, and then see if the need for off hours like at 1 a.m. is really needed. They're not seeing that, so it's kind of maximizing the existing staffing. So we're going to try that out for a 6-month period, reevaluate, and see if expansion is needed. Spokane City Fire is still planning to do the 4 paramedics. They just won't be all on at the same time. They'll be rotating on those days for coverage, and then our crisis providers would then be joining with them. On hours that our crisis providers aren't able to join, so they'll be 24 hours, but our crisis providers are not at this point. They will be doing other things, and the time, portional time spent will then be excluded from the billing for the services under the mental sales tax. So we're only paying for proportional time that they're directly spending as part of the program, even though they are assigned specifically to the program.
Okay, so as you're talking about current, I mean, this was supposed to be a new program and all of that. So now we're talking current staffing. I want to make sure that we're not supplanting funding for positions they're already doing.
No, so in lengthy conversation, it was made clear as part of the agreement, this is part of the expansion of that program, which does not currently exist for the service coverage and hours and staffing. So we made that clear in the discussions. It's just about how they practically put it out with their team members. For the crisis side, it's all brand new. So we're hiring all new members for that. Because of how they're doing the staffing for the additional hours, we may not need 4 crisis providers. We may not need only 3 if they're only running 1 team, because we can match those hours based on our service coverage. So I know previously we'd said 4 and 4. It might be 4 for them, 3 for us, and then we would cover those hours for 12 hours. For example, you have 1 team on for a 3-12 shift, another team for a 3-12 shift, then another team. Well, for our crisis responders, they only have 2. Covers that, and then 1 doing a partial. We don't need a 4th at this point until the hours indicate that the need exists.
And it's the hope that they're not setting up full fire units, they're just setting up a paramedic at a crisis.
Correct. And they are providing the vehicle as part of that as well. So they'll be sending out the unit and responding with our crisis provider from one of their set locations. And so again, program elements under the ILA that we agreed to with legal and their legal will not change. Stipulations for the cap amount to not exceed 650 will remain. So none of that stuff changes legally. It's just programmatic elements. Sure.
So I'm assuming that these folks are working out of either station 1 or 4. Are there other stations that they're working out of?
We are still in negotiations with that. I don't think they've been finally selected. I do believe Station 1 4 are some of the ones that they are designated for Spokane area. They still have not confirmed the station location yet.
So why would they be wanting to work out of 4 instead of 1? I would assume that the majority of the calls are 1's district.
Again, we are,
Still trying to figure that out.
yeah, we're still,
Okay.
we're,
Never mind.
yeah,
My
requesting.
question's too early.
Yes.
Good luck.
And I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but they will provide information justifying where that station would be based on the number of calls and the need that they're seeing.
So just to clarify, so right now they've got really just two people. Well, that's part of ERU, right?
Correct.
One firefighter, paramedic, and one crisis responder.
Correct.
So even though it'd be one team at a time, they would still have 4 separate firefighter paramedics that are now assigned to work, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then there would still be an expansion of the hours of the coverage relative to what currently exists.
Exactly.
Okay. And then you're saying, basically, this would be get us started and you continue to evaluate the growth or the ability
Yes.
to add further as it develops.
Yeah, really the goal is to give some time for them to work out internally in programming. They're still just working with their teams to decide how that would look for the paramedic firefighter combination. At least on our end, we have that ability to scale up based on that need. So in the future, if they're able to, we would like to see at least 2 teams operating simultaneously in the community, covering at least 2 parts of the city during those high utilization call times.
Yeah, that would be, so this is a pilot program. That'd be subject to funding, future funding as well.
Do you foresee in that, you're looking for that ideal, right?
Correct.
Do you foresee that? You said 6 months, or do you kind of an analysis or a review? You feel optimistic that within a year we might gravitate towards that?
I'm always optimistic.
Clearly as expansions on the table.
Yes.
Right? That it's just, what does that expansion look like?
Yeah.
And it's starting versus moving towards, right?
Right, and I always have these great ideas on how these programs move forward. I think at the time that fire is asking us to evaluate is, do we really want to put a team out there that may not be responding, be more effective to ensure that the response call times that we're seeing the most, we are prioritizing, and that ends up being the reduction of service delivery that they're seeing on their side for behavioral calls. So that's what we're going to be evaluating in 6 months. Well, I mean, we'll be evaluating continuously. But I think a 6-month period is a really good time because the board will hear this update in January. And then, of course, for the next year's fiscal cycle for June as well.
Has there been any interest expressed by the city to operate out of other stations other than 1 or 4?
I think for us, everything's on the table. They have not shared with us yet what their thoughts are on other stations. We definitely recommend, that's part of our request in the contract, that we can have some say in the decision process. But we've really deferred to them on where the highest needs are based on the calls they receive. So that's what's driving the selection for the station. If you're only running 1 team, though, our thought was it needs to be more centrally located to respond more effectively. If you have 2, then you could have them stationed in areas where north or south or east or west. Again, we're really trying to work with them to build that out based on information they provide to us.
So the reason I ask is because I do not think, I could be wrong, I haven't seen the district maps lately, but I do not think that Station 1 extends to East Sprague. And East Sprague and what used to be Camp Hope is a prime area for folks to gravitate to. And then we have a couple facilities out there as well that service folks that are in need of help. So that was my reason for my question is, if it's all about downtown, there are other parts of the city, other parts of the core that might need assistance other than just downtown.
Agreed. Our understanding is that the team would be able to respond within the entire jurisdiction of the city fire. At least that is dependent on where the calls are.
Yeah.
They're going all the way out to that line, they're getting another call. The ability to respond effectively while out there is our anticipation for the program. We are still waiting for final confirmation from the city.
Okay.
I'll just share that when I went on the ride along with current BRU, we went all over town. So it didn't matter what station they were based out of, and a lot of times if we were out on a call somewhere else, then we could go somewhere close by because they're already out in the community, so they really didn't spend a lot of time sitting around.
Okay.
You know, in the station, they were constantly roaming around.
Good.
It's not
Yeah, I would think they may be parking their vehicle at a station overnight, but
Yeah.
to Commissioner Jordan's point, my guess is they're out all the time and they have the flexibility to respond where they're needed at. When you and I talked last week, Justin, I think if I recall correctly, you had mentioned the city has a grant through UW to pay for some crisis response today, co-response, which is going away. And that was kind of Commissioner CUNY's point around this can't supplant. So even if that goes away, this has to be for a new program. It's not replacing their loss of funds somewhere else.
Yeah, and the program they're working in conjunction with the BRU is more of the evaluative. I believe there is a joint partnership and funding with FBH that's doing that portion. They're receiving it as well as fire utilizing their own internally to fund the BRU. So it's a combination of a couple of different sources, but they're primarily funding that. Again, the goal for this is to create a new program, but use similar lessons learned from the BRU as to what the FBH will utilize for that existing person or their existing program. We're still deferring to fire. Again, our part of the ILA agreement and the ongoing discussions with their leadership, it was made clear about the use of this program being a new pilot to provide for the service, that they could use information from the BRU pilot that they have to inform and develop, but not to replace the rest of them. I will have to still get down the nitty-gritty. Like I said, I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of those changes before you had signed that. Again, I do anticipate we'll see that. If the board would like us to move forward with it quicker, because I do believe the city did review that and approve moving forward. The council did. We can do that for the 10th. For right now, it's set for the 17th.
It's fine.
It's fine.
But we still have the ILAs for the opioid response before the board today for the STARS STAT program. The city still wants to move forward with that as well. So we'll be doing that expansion here. And then we are working with the city for another ILA per the board's direction to move forward, allowing for money to be shifted from the city to our Maddie's Place project. So that will also come before the board here in the coming weeks. I believe they will be reviewing that. The council will be sometime here later in June as well.
I think we just want to make sure any of these ILAs, the city is approved prior to us.
And that's what we're making sure in advance.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I believe the opioid one was just done. Last time, yeah, that's correct. And I do have some good news to share. So just, we talk about budgets. So I know I gave this doom and gloom about our budgets being cut. So because Spokane, BHSO came to the table first with the healthcare authority and negotiated, and we did have to pay back 10 million. Two major things happened in pledge session. They allowed for the expansion of the use of proviso dollars, like we've been saying, we stipulated for very specific use. They freed up that so we can use it more flexibly. So we're going to be pushing to expand out funding for our planned projects here locally. So that's good news. It freed up a lot more money for us. We had previously made no cuts to our existing programming. So everyone's continued to receive the services that they had previously, including our expanded service at the Crisis Relief and Sobering Stabilization Center. A lot of acronyms out there. And there was no cuts to our block grant funding. We were able to also go in conversation with them. So that's good news for our region. We're continue to put that money out, especially in light of all these budget shortfalls. I'll leave that with you.
Thank you.
You got more stories like that, you come back in.
All right. I'm on play.
And Justin, while he's here, also got some good feedback from HD and others as pointing to the ASO that he and his team are responsible to as being the leaders in our state, much to the chagrin of other regional ASOs. But as I told Justin, it's something they can strive to try to achieve the same level of notoriety, good notoriety that Justin and his team are achieving. So it's lot of good work that his team is doing and the state's recognizing that as well.
Yeah, they're just happy they got their money. They're going back into it, they would be really happy about it, yes. It pays to go to the table negotiate early.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. No,
Uh-huh.
I know you're well respected amongst around the state, so.
Well,
thank you.
this board is, so thank you all. Have a good day.
Okay, that takes us to miscellaneous items, because I know we've got some executive sessions.
So. Okay, so I had one, it didn't click while they were presenting, but I noticed when we were having the Becca discussion yesterday. I think it was both Tori and Tim mentioned that they referenced timelines, that they had to let staff know if there were layoffs. From what I understand, that timeline they were referring to, they didn't say it in the meeting, is 30 days. If the Becca funding runs out in July, like July 1, we're already 3 days into June. So any day that these people work past July 1 has to be absorbed in our budget or reserves. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear and that was the understanding, because it didn't click with me when they referenced those timelines or, you know, notice that they had to give, that it's 30 days. It's not 2 weeks or anything, it's 30 days. So
I think part of the discussion though yesterday was, are we willing to do the additional $380,000 for the rest of this year to step it down? And then drop the funding.
but I just want to make sure everybody understands that each person that does continue to the end of the year, that's going to be absorbed. And that there's a 30-day buffer essentially that those individuals are notified. So like, even if that person was notified today, there'd be 3 days of pay that they would get beyond, because it's a 30 days notice. So I just wanted to make sure that they never mentioned how long that notice was. And I just wanted to make sure everyone
Understands
knew
it's
that.
30 days. Well, I
The
think
meter's running right now. We're
Yes.
already
I
into that
felt
30 day.
there was a decision, I felt there was, I call it silent consensus on not continuing it into M26. And there was a lot of discussion
We never
around what we would do for the remainder of
finalized.
25.
I mean, I think we didn't finalize that discussion, which we need to.
Agreed, I
But
just,
that was the 382,000 they were asking for the rest of
this year.
this year. That would allow, I mean, in my mind, the step down to go, yeah, we're done. At the end of this year, if we choose to do the 382,000, I think it was 382.
It's right around there, just we are 3 days into it, so even if you were to decide today that we're stopping immediately, we have spent a little bit already.
Right.
Maybe some of their budgets could handle it. I would assume if you're gonna do a step down, it would need to come out of fund balance, so a decision sooner rather than later would be great, so we can plan a budget accordingly.
Jeff, to that end, the other thing that wasn't discussed is whenever we do layoffs, there is contract language specific to payouts of PTO vacation. So that is also something that would need to be factored into consideration that I don't think has been at this point for what that cost would be that is not likely in the budget right now.
Yeah, I think my concern yesterday was that they didn't come to us with, what does it look like with us not funding any more than the state
I
provides?
specifically asked them to do a fully loaded, a 425 only, and then a couple of things in between.
I think,
And they got 3 legs with the 4-legged stool.
I mean, I don't know, I mean, I guess this is how the discussion went. I mean, I kind of felt like we potentially would give them till the end of this year at the
380-ish.
2 level that yes, would have to come out of fund balance, but then not funding anymore beyond the state funding for the future.
So to Ashley's point, if the board were to say we'll do another 380, it would probably get you to Thanksgiving if it's gonna be all inclusive of payouts and those sorts of things. So I don't know, you guys, if you say end of the year, it might end up being more. So think about it as you do your decision making. Is it a dollar amount that's all inclusive that goes as far as it goes? Or is it a timeline and we pay the bill, whatever it is at the end?
For
Well,
sure.
and can, who would be looking at whether their current budget can absorb any too? Would that be your office?
That would.
Their office.
But it has to be there, because we have no idea what their plans are going forward to do things.
I mean, I think they have to, I mean, that was my concern is they have not planned for, they're not getting any more funding from us in 2026.
When they left that first presentation, I specifically asked them, come back and show us what you can do with the 400,000 you get, and I don't think we got that yesterday.
Oh, we didn't.
So I mean, I think
Because our next planned budget meeting is in 2 weeks, which gives us a full payroll cycle into July, a 30-day thing. So at this point, we're beyond stopping on July 1, 100% fiscally. If we're looking at doing some additional, we're fine. I should have circled this back around yesterday. I think we're all gonna go achievement today. There's a lot of numbers over a lot of time. But, and it was after we adjourned, it was like, you know, back to the back.
okay, so now I'm confused as to what you're thinking, Jeff.
Well, just getting the board to come to a decision.
So
I would like some more information on what that they need to have, who would. You know, they need to go look at each of their departments, figure out who would get potentially laid off, and then look at the buyout information, like that's all, we need all that information to be able to. You know, put a plan together.
And one other thing with that is those were not the current contract numbers, so keep in mind,
Right.
1553 is about to the end of negotiations. 492J is on your agenda, I believe, this afternoon. So the wages that you were provided are not the actual wages that show the numbers for payout and for actual salary through the rest of this year.
Another thing I feel like wasn't clearly answered is what happens if they lay off all these people, but the cases are still filed by schools? What do we do with that?
So which will have to hear them.
I know that, but there's a practical question that I feel like is important for them to think through, and I just.
but I think we need to give them the direction, which I keep thinking we are, but they're not really hearing, is that they're gonna have $400,000 from the state as of the first of the year. I think we're gonna have to do some transition because we're already in that transition time. So it's like if we say you've got an additional $300,000 to take you through the end of this year, how long does that get you? You know, versus the full 380, you know, and it does have to be inclusive, which is gonna force them to come up with whatever that is, because I mean, we don't have the money to fund what the state's not willing to do, and we're gonna have to, I think we're gonna have to start making decisions on, we're not gonna be able to meet all our statutory requirements as it is. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I think to your question, if they're still filed, it's just gonna take longer to get through the process. I mean, things will move slower. That's what I think probably the most important person on that list to keep there is probably the court commissioner. So you don't flood the rest of Superior Court with these hearings. So, but as Tori sat down there, she did not agree with me. She thought the more important were the case managers at the bottom, you know, of that structure. So.
Well, just because the case was filed doesn't prohibit the judge from just coming in and saying there's not enough money to provide public defense, and so just dismiss all of them. That way he gets it off their docket altogether.
You want me to invite them back like next Tuesday if there's time on your regular agenda? You want it for the next budget meeting on probably Monday?
Did we decide against meeting next Monday?
Because we can do.
Oh, the road, the
Ribbon cutting.
NSD, that's right. That's right.
People have some appointments in the afternoon.
I mean, can they have a plan as to what would happen? I mean, with only getting the state funding.
Well, I would recommend saying without a plan, there won't be funding. And I think that would motivate a plan's creation.
But I don't know, we're not gonna have additional funding. in 20.
No, but like if you're looking at doing like a 300,000-ish end of the year. You know, what I'm hearing is we need to tell them a plan for no additional funding, the 425. What does that look like? How would you recommend moving forward with that? We all agree it's not optimal, far from it, but what does that look like? And then do you want to also throw out a number that if we were to give X amount of dollars for the remainder of 25, how would you phase down during that 6 months with that X amount of dollars? All inclusive, you know, look at payouts and everything. Those would be the two things I would ask.
Yeah, I was there with you for the first half, not for the second. Because that, if it's not important to the state and it's not a priority. And we're the only ones doing it, why are we doing it?
That's a fair
And
point.
so I would rather keep police officers on the street than to try and salvage a program that evidently nobody else thinks is important.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I just heard another commissioner talk about a dollar amount, so I was speaking to that.
Scott.
Keep in mind too that if memory serves me. Both juvenile and Superior Court are spending current budget dollars outside of this grant. I want to say it was $260,000.
I think that was just juvenile's portion.
So it
I
was,
think
it was
closer to
400, okay,
between
okay,
all
I
groups.
stand corrected, but those are dollars that they also need to be looking at and say, if the rest of the program is going away because the state's not prioritizing that funding yet. What of these dollars then need to be reduced or is not going to be utilized as well?
Reallocated.
I kind of thought that would give them some capacity for budget cuts in the next year.
Yeah,
Or to get a 26 budget or.
or to help them step down through this year if that's the board's decision.
Also.
I would just recommend making a decision. I think once the funding decision is made, then the group will solve for that problem. And we're just kind of delaying it. If we continue this 2 more weeks and ask for more information, we asked for that information in the past and receive it. So if they're given the specific funding levels that the board grants, then they'll solve for that.
That's kind of what I guess I'm thinking is that we give them a little bit to figure out how they step it down and then we're done funding.
So they're meeting next week and they heard loud and clear that they have to live within the $425,000. So we're gonna regroup and then I can send it the email that we got. They got it loud and clear. Got the message.
I think it was just I think for me, the lack of clarity was on, are we giving a step down during the rest of this year or not? That's,
Well, yeah, decision wasn't made on that.
and
They're
that's,
assuming that they're not. That's their assumption.
isn't they're not gonna get the 328.
So
Which
if
if
we
that
need to
is,
modify that, we need to get more
Good
people.
assumption.
if that is the decision, then my office needs to be made aware of that so we can start issuing the layoff letters.
Yes.
But and if we're gonna invite them to come back to the next opportunity. Are we looking only for the 425? Or are we looking for a little extra padding for step down? I keep counting to 3 and not getting there. And so I'm looking for.
I would like a little, I think if we could come to a dollar amount for the time to step down, we're gonna have to pay some anyway, because we're past this January or June 1, 30-day time frame. So it's gonna take a little time. There's gonna need to be some step down time. So I'm supportive of like a dollar amount, and then we just work through that in terms of the fair process of layoffs and what have you.
What,
Can we
can I
decide-
just ask, what's a realistic dollar amount? I mean,
Because
because,
they
it
keep
sounds
it
like-
382.
but they said, but they told us yesterday that would get them to the end of the year,
Sounds
right?
like-
But you're saying it only gets them to like Thanksgiving,
Well, and-
so. I mean, what is and then the buyout, we never even discussed.
That's the
So-
buyout. That's what Jeff's referring to.
Okay,
To the extent there are buyouts, and there will be.
Just their vacation
82.
time at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
end of service.
yeah, which I don't think was probably contemplated in what they were, and then you're saying the wages were different now because of updated contract, and so.
I think Matt's suggestion is right on. If you give clarity on a dollar amount, they will figure out then how long that's going to be, when they have to work with HR to give layoff letters. If you're less squishy, if you're more squishy than that, they're not going to know what to do with it. So
How, do you mind? Can I throw out a number? $250,000, $250,000,
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I was, that was. what-
250,000. Tell them, make it work. I'm sure they're gonna need you to calculate their buyouts, the new
I do
wage.
know in talking with them.
250,000, it's gonna get them a couple of months. They can step
mentioned
down.
There's some 12-week programs. I think that would be enough to phase out any program that's mid 12 week.
They can, I mean, if we say 250, they can
Manage
come back in 2 weeks and say if there's some absolute reason that it has to be different than that, then they can come and present that to us.
I saw Macio whispering, did I make a mistake? What did we do? What did I know? I pieced the wrong words together and then the attorney stood up.
Madam Chair, I think what I'm hearing you say is, there needs to be a motion made, seconded and passed to make this amount of money available. That's what you're saying. That's a decision. You're making a decision right
Well,
now, I
we're,
think.
no, we're
I was
saying,
throwing it out for.
we're saying that we're gonna come up with a dollar amount that they're gonna come back to us and say whether that meets
That's
it or not.
yes,
I heard two
And
hundred
they
fifty
can,
thousand.
work within that and come back and present something
At which
that's.
time a decision will be made.
so we'll give guidance, Jim. Our team will, 250,000 is what we're looking to provide to the team for the stepping down the program. And it will have to be, through sometime between the end of the year, as far as it goes. And the board will have to take an action on a budget amendment to move dollars out of unrestricted fund balance to cover this. So that will be a future action.
So I'll ask them to come in at the 425 only. And 425 plus 250 for step down. For those two different options for the board to consider.
Well,
No, I think we're giving them the ability at the 250,000 for the rest of this year.
675 to work.
So they need to come back and talk to us, and then it's whatever the state is funding them in 26.
July 1 to July.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry I took you down the
Okay.
scenic route.
it worked.
But I would still like to know what the counties
I will give
do
them a
and
call.
for other counties, because we are the number one, but we're not the only one.
I will call Dwight Diabley. I believe he's still budget director in King County.
Are there any other miscellaneous items? First, it's done. Martha is at the head of the table.
Yes, no proclamations this week, so there's that. We did have a flurry of media activity late last week. First of all, the assessor's office sending out property valuation notices. There was a news release. Northside Transfer Station had an emergency situation. Someone came in with a toxic mix of household hazardous waste, and it started emitting a white gaseous cloud. So fire department was called, Department of Ecology has taken over the investigation. It was just chlorine tablets, various other cleaners, fertilizer. As I said, a toxic mix. So
I'm happy to share that were no employees that were injured.
Yes.
Not at all.
They were evaluated by paramedics on scene, but our employees were safe.
And it gave us an opportunity to remind the public that household hazardous waste is accepted, but only on weekends. So, the city's utility tax letter, that was leaked to Nick Gibson at the Spokesman Review.
Leaked?
Yeah,
Okay.
Or handed to.
well, I'm,
Document.
but
Okay.
you know, it wasn't generally released to the public. You had to go for it. As far as we know. So,
Back on the league.
I asked him about that. He's not going to reveal a source. He did say it was neither a city nor a county employee. So, So Nick received quotes, KXLY also followed up on it. I'm sure it will be revisited at a later date. There was also Department of Homeland Services, Security rather, the sanctuary jurisdiction list. Krem and the spokesman followed up on that. It was basically Spokane County has never issued a resolution or passed a resolution that we're a sanctuary jurisdiction and we are in compliance with all federal and state laws.
Yeah, I think we need to have Sheriff Knowles come in and discuss that with us.
DHS has pulled down that website.
Yes.
No longer available. Yeah, the list is no longer on there. Well,
The interesting thing is that Spokane County was on that list, but not the city of Spokane.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's partly of some of the discussions I had with the sheriff on this, and so I think we need to get briefed by the sheriff as to why.
So we've done a fair amount of research on that. We're in compliance with the state and federal laws. There was supposed to be in that information, some sort of formal notice going out to the counties. We haven't received anything, so I'm not sure there's any action we need to take on it.
Well, and I really
Well, I
want
don't
to
think there's
thank,
any action. I think it's just informing us as to how we're meeting both the federal and state laws. State law is not quite in compliance with the federal.
Can you answer that, Devin?
I'm sorry, Commissioner French.
Well, so especially to the federal delegation and stuff, because they will take that list and then just scratch out. And if we don't do something in the positive, we're gonna have to somehow come back and circle and restore grant money, and that's tough. So you're better off to be proactive, because otherwise the feds are gonna take that and run with it.
So you're saying proactive action to get off that list?
I don't think we can get off the list because that's state statute. But we can provide clarity so that they don't, end up
Well,
punishing us without knowing that, hey, we are not a sanctuary county.
and this was, we had a NACO board meeting, I zoomed into and big discussion there. And so NACO is really working hard on this, which is, I think, how part of the list was determined to come down. Because some states were on the list, like North Dakota, which does not, has not declared anything. So that's why I think there's more of a discussion that, talking to the sheriff with Waspic that we probably want to have, and I don't know if that's executive session or could be.
Not sure what questions you want answered or what
Yeah.
discussion you want to have.
So we will have this discussion and probably this will come back next week
Well,
in some form.
so advice that was given to me by a representative from FTA, and it was there twice, was do everything you can to provide clarity about your position relative to national policy. And so, and the reason is because, when the edict comes down that says sanctuary cities or sanctuary counties, scratch them off the list for funding, we want to make sure that we've got something that says, no, we're not. Otherwise, we're going to be scratching off and then trying hard to get back on the list for funding. And so that's why I was saying, whatever we can do to provide clarity around that will save us a lot of time and heartache to try and fix a mistake and stuff. So, and I had two different people at the FTA give me that advice separately in two different meetings with them. So that's why I was that's all I'm trying to.
What does it look like?
Yeah, are you
Providing
suggesting like what the Valley did about a month
Can we
ago?
have this in another?
Yes.
What did the
Time.
Valley do? The Valley
Because I
passed
think
a
we need to
resolution
do
stating that they
more
are not a
investigation.
sanctuary city. I mean, is that like that? I mean, are you familiar that the Valley, like a month or 6 weeks ago or something, passed a resolution stating they're not a sanctuary city, but fully compliant with the state laws, so.
Yeah, it could be something as simple as that.
Um,
And there.
We're gonna try to table this until we can have a full discussion on it next week.
Great, I won't add anything to that. If I can just help move us along, then we do have a great event planned for tomorrow. I think Martha Lou is planning to brief you on that.
absolutely.
thanks for all the media updates. But we do have quite a bit on the event front. We'll be setting up this afternoon. Martha Lou has a draft release and a run-up show that needs the chair's review at your next opportunity. So we can get all those details finalized.
I also need to confirm the RSVPs among the board. I have Commissioner CUNY, Commissioner French, Commissioner Waldrop, possibly Commissioner Jordan. Will you be there?
Which event?
It is the helicopter commissioning.
Yes.
Okay, and Commissioner Kearns.
Yep, I'll be there.
All right, thank you. And I am finished.
Okay. So Martha Lou, on the run-up show, just since you're here, has the sheriff not gotten back as to his comments?
Who?
The sheriff.
I just received those this morning.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And I have updates to the news release, and Pat put his fine professional touch on it. And also to the run-up show, and I'll be getting those to you.
Thank you.
We're done with miscellaneous matters. We do have one executive session item. It's under pending and potential litigation. RCW 423110. It's a small group today. Scott Simmons, Kyle Twig, Jeff McMorris, Ben Bradabo, Louis Graff, Pat Bell, Jim Amacio, Jasper Coulter, Devin Curda, myself, and Special Deputy Prosecutor from Foster Garvey, Steve DiGiulio. No action is anticipated. We're sure we'll be done in 30 minutes. Jay Donovan.
And we'll invite the board.
And Jay Donovan.
Okay.
Also, special DP.
County's not gonna be here, that's a short list.
I could have just said who's not, but.
Thank you all. We're gonna go into executive session for 30 minutes. At the end of the 30 minutes, to the purpose of the people all in attendance, as everyone stated, we will then conclude our morning meeting and see everybody back for our 2 o'clock meeting this afternoon. Thank you all.
No.